Thank you, Chair. We're live streaming on YouTube, so I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Good evening and welcome to the virtual extraordinary general meeting of East Devon District Council on the 22nd of March 2022. I'm your chair, Councillor Ian Thomas, and I'd also like to extend a special welcome to viewers of our live stream on the Council's YouTube channel. Could I remind everyone that due to concerns relating to COVID risk, our Council's delegated much of its decision-making authority to senior officers for the period to the 11th of May 2022. Consequently, this evening will be a consultative meeting only. However, we will work as closely as possible to normal procedural rules as detailed in our Constitution. Where our meeting would normally have decided a matter, it will now make recommendation to a senior officer. That officer would then take our recommendation into account when making their decision. May I remind colleagues that the Code of Conduct applies throughout the meeting, and we reserve the right to disconnect any disruptive participant. If there's a break in internet connection or a power cut, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. Should we not be successful within 15 minutes, we'll consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. As this is a large meeting, it's particularly important that colleagues ensure their microphones are muted when not in use to avoid disturbance from background noise. If you wish to speak at any point, would you please raise your yellow electric hand and wait to be called. Please keep points short and do not interrupt while others are speaking. Our agenda is also available online at www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We'll now start the meeting by a roll call of members present. When you hear your name, please unmute your microphone and confirm by saying present. Thank you very much. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Present.
Councillor Arnott.
Present.
Councillor Bailey.
Present.
Councillor Barrow.
Present. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Bickley.
Present. Thank you.
Councillor Blakey. Councillor Blakey? No. Councillor Bloxham?
Present.
Councillor Bonetta?
Present, thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
Present, thank you. Do you mind if I leave my camera off because my internet keeps going down?
Thank you. Councillor Bruce?
Present, Sarah.
Councillor Cahill?
Present.
Councillor Chamberlain?
Present. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman?
Present. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chubb?
Present.
Councillor Coleman?
Present.
Councillor Davey?
Present, thank you.
Councillor De Sarum?
Present, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Dent?
Present, thank you.
Councillor Faithful?
Present.
Councillor Gardner?
Present.
Councillor Gazzard?
Present, thank you, Sarah.
Councillor Hall?
Present.
Councillor Hartnell?
Present.
Councillor Hawkins?
Present.
Councillor Hayward?
Present.
Councillor Hookway?
Present.
Councillor Howe?
Present.
Councillor Hughes?
Present.
Councillor Ingham?
Present.
Councillor Jackson?
Present.
Councillor Jarvis? Councillor Jarvis? No. Councillor Johns? Councillor Johns?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Young?
Present.
Councillor Kemp?
Present, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Key?
Present, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence?
Present, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Ledger?
Present, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Loudon?
Present, Sarah, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Manley?
Present.
Councillor McCollum? No. Councillor Moulding?
Present.
Councillor Parr,
Present.
Councillor Pepper, Councillor Pepper, no, Councillor Pook,
Present.
Councillor Pratt,
Present.
Councillor Ranger,
Present.
Councillor Rickson,
Present.
Councillor Rowland.
Present. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Rylance,
Present.
Councillor Skinner.
He sends his apologies.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor,
Present.
Councillor Thomas,
Present.
Councillor Whibley, Councillor Whibley, no, Councillor Woodward.
Present. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ragg,
Present.
Councillor Chris Wright.
Sarah, it's Megan here. He's just rung to say he's having a problem with his iPad, but he's going to try and ring in on his phone, so he may join us shortly.
Sorry, was that Councillor Chris Wright?
Chris Wright, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
And then, thank you, Councillor Tom Wright.
Present. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I guess that means that we're actually quorate, so we can progress. Agenda item 1 is public speaking. I've got 2 members of the public registered to speak this evening. In each case, I'll invite the speaker into the meeting and note that we should have 3 minutes each to speak, and a 30-second reminder will be given before the end of that time. First to speak, I've got Mr. Mike Goodman. Mike, would you like to speak here, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I want to thank Council for listening to residents. Yes, over 2,000 have signed the petition regarding the car park charges. The Council would have been surprised at the depth of concern by residents and have called this extraordinary meeting tonight. Let's make no mistake about it, it is the people that have caused this rethink tonight, but these proposals do not go far enough. There has been no consultation with residents and businesses on the increases, which goes against your own community engagement policy published on your website. I'm asking Council to rethink their decision to increase 21 car parks to £2 per hour. These increases will make East Devon coastal car parks the most expensive in the southwest, and that is shameful. The reference in the budget papers say there is low impact on equalities and diversity. This is without a detailed report being completed. I would suggest this is wrong, and I would ask members to follow this up, because it doesn't, in my view, follow your own constitution and the equality framework of local government 2021. There is no doubt there was confusion at both the cabinet meeting and full council on how many car parks were being increased. The leader of the council said in the press it was a small selection of prime coastal car parks. Neither the published minutes or recordings of cabinet meeting or full council were 21 car parks mentioned. The minutes, page 83.2.4, refers to 8 car parks and 2.5 refers to 9. This makes 17, not 21. At no time was the background paper discussed. I put it to you that members were confused and not aware that 21 car parks were affected. The council's own vision, constitution and Nolan principles, I would suggest, have not been followed. And the council runs a risk that legal challenge could come their way, as it has happened in other parts of the country. The estimated net income from a £2 charge is in excess of 3.5 million. And remember that the monitoring officer said you cannot simply increase car park charges in order to raise revenue to spend on other areas. How can a council take this action without having a car parking strategy in place? I would ask you now to instruct officers to engage in a consultation with organisations, businesses and the public to deliver a comprehensive car parking strategy that would agree the car parks are run and the right level of charge. Members, this will be the right and courageous decision to make for the benefit of businesses, residents and tourists. And as Mark Twain said, with courage, you will dare to take risks, have the strength to be compassionate and the wisdom to be humble. Courage is the foundation of integrity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mike. I'm sure members will take your comments into account in their deliberations later. Could I ask the second speaker, please? Mr. Richard Ely. Richard, good to see you again. Do we have Mr. Ely? I thought I'd seen him earlier on. Is Mr. Ely not in the meeting?
He was in the meeting, Chair.
I'm here now.
I could have sworn, I'm sure you were. It's not like
Okay.
you to nip out early, Richard.
They muted me, but I'm unmuted now.
But it wasn't me. Wasn't me, honest.
No, that's okay.
You've got 3 minutes now, Richard, if you'd like to make your points. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Good evening, everyone. I will deal specifically with the proposals before you. The first is to change the charging regime at the Roxburgh car park. It's a modest change and will make little or no difference. It won't adversely impact your revenue, and it's a small benefit to traders, so please vote for it. The late arrival of this proposal was due to the need for sense testing. Good idea. Why then wasn't the whole price hike sense tested? It can't have been, there clearly wasn't time. Why are we sense testing a small change at one car park whilst waving through the rest? The truth is that the price hike is probably a bad mistake. It was rushed through. There was terrible misinformation, no consultation, no comparisons or benchmarking, no thought, no common sense, no basic arithmetic. Members, bad and hurried procedures always lead to bad policy, as sure as night follows day. What a pity this was not done properly and professionally. Doubling parking charges for so many car parks is very unusual. I have looked on the internet and I can find no similar examples. So this is quite some socio-economic experiment. It might work, but if it doesn't, the impact could be very serious. This is why I have asked the car park team for all the figures for every car park for the last 3 years. Fortunately, these are easily accessible. I will also process this year's numbers as they become available. We should know quite soon whether things are going well or badly. I have invited the High Street Task Force and the Institute of Place Management to monitor the situation. This is a remarkable leap of faith that you are making, and it is of national importance and interest. I have also suggested to our MP that central government should get involved. Car park research is thin on the ground. We must be sure that lessons are learned nationally from this unprecedented experiment. I'm sure that everyone will be keen to see the price hike closely and independently assessed. The second proposal tonight is to transfer car park charges from council to cabinet. All we ask is that action is taken quickly if the numbers are bad. I would be grateful if the leader could confirm that the car park team will release all data to myself and others so that endless freedom of information requests are avoided. We need full openness and transparency, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Richard. There was one question there in relation to information released from the leader. Is Councillor Arnott available? Would you like to comment on that point?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Thank you, and thank you. Can you hear me okay, Chair? I've got a strange reception today.
Certainly can, yes.
Thank you very much. So Mr. Ely hasn't asked me this before, but I don't see any reason at all that, since I'll be able to look at the figures for the car park charges, both historic and how they're going in the future, I see no reason why he shouldn't be able to access those. But I'm not an officer in charge of FOI policy, so I can't absolutely categorically say yes to that, because I may be speaking out of turn. But unless an officer wants to pipe up and say, no, you shall wait 28 days for FOI, I can't see any problem with that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader, and hopefully that's useful, Richard, and no doubt your comments will be taken into account during the debate as the evening progresses. Both members of the public will now be put back into the waiting room. It sounds quite violent, doesn't it? And you're welcome, of course, to view the rest of the meeting live on the Council's email channel. Thank you very much for your contributions. Agenda item 2 is apologies. I don't actually have any on the ticket here, but I'm aware that Councillor Twist gave his apologies this evening and asked that it be stressed that his absence is due to a conflict with his position on Devon County Council in his finance portfolio, and that's the only reason he's not with us this evening. Do we have any other apologies, Sarah, please?
We do, Chair, from Councillor Allen, Councillor Miller and Councillor Skinner.
Thank you very much. I assume, Councillor Bonetti, you were going to notify about Councillor Miller, yes? Have we covered everybody else off? Okay. Oh, Councillor Wright, Chris.
I just wanted to say, obviously it's coming up with my information that I am here in the meeting. Slight technical error with my iPad, so it's off my phone, I'm afraid.
Okay, lovely, lovely. Well, phones work remarkably well, Chris, and it's good to nearly see you, or at least to have you present. Thank you. Agenda item 3 are declarations of interest. I'll again look to Councillor Hughes, which I imagine is the same as Councillor Twist. Is it, Stuart?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, I've got to declare a DPI and leave the meeting. So there are, Chair. Okay,
thank you very much. Thank you for letting us know now. Are there any other declarations?
Sorry, can I be clear what DPI is? We need to record what it is. Where has he gone?
Councillor Hughes, could you answer that, please?
I think he might have gone.
It's gone very quickly.
No, I did press the leave button. It's because I'm the cabinet member for highway management, Henry.
Okay. I don't think that gives you a DPI as such.
Yeah, because it has a reflection on parking charges on street as well.
Right, if that's what you want to declare, that's fine.
Okay.
And I'd work on the basis, Henry, that Councillor Twist's declaration was on the same basis. I've also got Councillor Ian Hall. Ian.
Well, sorry, we won't record Councillor Twist because he's not here.
Okay, sorry, my apologies. Councillor Hall, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Declared interest as a county councillor. I believe this is just a personal interest.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bailey, Jess.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I'd like to declare personal interest as a Devon County councillor. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chubb, Ian.
Again, county councillor, so declare an interest.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any more hands, so we'll move on from that. We'll now move on to agenda item 4, which is the report on car parking. And I'd like to invite Henry to address his report on car parking issues, please. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So it's a short report, which we're pleased to know. And in that sense, I'll keep my introduction very short as well. Literally by saying I don't think there's a huge amount I can really add from what's in the report. Andrew Ennis and John Golding are here, who will be able to answer these sort of technical questions around Roxburgh. But the only amendment I would like to make, please, in paragraph 5, I talk about that if the changes are approved, it's about ensuring that we can consult at the same time as the others. The consult's the wrong word, it should be notify. So just to manage expectations in that regard. But otherwise, Chair, I don't think there's anything I can usefully add, and happy to take any questions down the line as necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You rescued me, Councillor Gardner. I thought it was going to be a very quick meeting then. Councillor Gardner, Kathy.
Wow, I wasn't expecting this to be so quick. I'd like to make a couple of comments about this, please, because the Roxburgh car park is in my ward in Sidmouth Town. I would like to thank the officers and the members who've been involved in working on this car park issue for such a long time. I know that members of the public certainly won't be aware about the amount of work that's gone on and how long this has taken. It's been immensely complicated. There's been an awful lot of benchmarking going on, and I don't want to feel that officers should be, I don't want it to be that officers are criticised for not having done that. A lot of members have been involved as well. This has been going on for 2 years or more now, and hasn't had the best start following the initiation of this really under the last administration. So it's taken a long time. It's been very complicated, and we have known that we've had to put up car park charges. Most councils are doing this. We've tried to make it as fair as we possibly can. And of course, none of us are happy about doing this. I was determined that Sidmouth would not have all its car parks at the same price. It took right till the last minute to resolve how that was going to be done for Roxburgh. It is a shopper's car park, maximum stay 2 hours, and we will be stressing over and over the value of a residence parking permit. They are brilliant value for money. So anybody who comes to town on a regular basis should buy a residence permit. I think there's been very low uptake up till now, but it's so important that people are told about those permits. I know it's a difficult thing to do. I know it's going to make us initially unpopular, but it's essential. We have to do it. We can't not have this done at this stage. we'll be a lot better off in the future. We've made this, it's a painful increase because it's stayed fixed low for a long time, but we're catching up to some other councils now. We don't want to do it, but it's got to be done. Residence permits are definitely the way to go, and they're such fantastic value. Plus, I have remembered the winter parking offer, which is also phenomenally good value for people coming to park in our car parks during the winter period. Most places don't have an offer anywhere near as good as that. So I think overall, when we look at this for everybody, I think we're in a good place. I think the talk of doom and gloom is misplaced, but we will see what happens, and we will have to react to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Councillor Bonetta, Jake.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I want to thank Henry and the officers for preparing this report and bringing this to the attention of Council. The Labour Group welcome the proposal to reduce the proposed hourly charge at Roxburgh car parks to £1.50 an hour. I want to agree with what Councillor Gardner just said there in terms of the parking permits and the residence permits. In the unique case of Sidmouth, as a primary tourism hotspot in East Devon, we believe this strikes the right balance between promoting the high street and ensuring council services are not cut. We also believe there is an argument for a wider introduction of shopper car parks in our primary economic centres across the district, obviously pending research. However, since the budget has already been approved, of course, we would not want to disturb this. We do not have an alternative budget, and therefore we'll save it for another time. The Labour Group therefore commends the administration on this first proposal, and actually we fully support this first proposal. However, economic recovery and supporting our local businesses and high streets are not the only issues under consideration tonight. We, the Labour Group, herald from a party that is proud to celebrate and expand on democracy. We believe in the strongest possible terms in transparency, integrity, and local leadership. But we also believe in greater devolution of power, not just from Westminster to councils, but through the democratic right of all councillors to be fully involved in decision making. And that's why we wholly oppose the second proposal to remove the car parking strategy from the list of issues delegated to full council. The Labour Group believes that regardless of which party or group runs the council now or into the future, we should have a car parking strategy reserved for adoption by all 60 of us. That is the democratic thing to do. And the Democratic Alliance, well, it needs to be true to its name in that fact. There are a great many overarching district-wide strategies, such as climate change, which already sit under full council as outlined in the policy framework. And yet also Cabinet still makes policy based on climate change needs all the time without the consultation of full council. Why therefore should car parking be treated any differently? And why is there a need to centralise power even further? Also, the members of Overview and Scrutiny Committees agreed that a car parking strategy should be adopted as soon as possible, at which point this impasse of coming to full council every time a minor parking change was proposed would come to an end. It is only fair that their views are respected and incorporated into any discussions had surrounding car parking. And the only feasible way that this can be achieved fully in line with the administration's policy on democracy and transparency is through reserved powers to full council in the policy framework, not just a small collective of 10 councillors. On top of this, where does it stop? Taking one policy away from full council leaves bare the opportunity for others to be stripped away and given to Cabinet. A further entrenchment and expansion of the already present and active strong leader model that this council has adopted. Can we truly afford to strip back the policy powers of full council to the bare legal minimum and return to the nod and handshake politics that ran our district for so many decades? The Labour Group therefore wishes to make it clear that we want to protect the individual voices of all councillors. We must not let the inconvenience of some quash the rights of the rest of us. No group of councillors has a monopoly on wisdom and truth, and therefore the Labour Group regrets that it must vote against the second recommendation and in favour of maintaining full democratic oversight over the district's car parks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that explanation, Jake. Councillor Brown, Colin, please.
Thank you, Chair. The leader of the council is quoted recently as saying, the last few months of finalising the car park charges across East Devon have been intensely hard work. For more than a decade, the previous administration ducked this issue. And when they became opposition with the duties to complete a charging review, they simply did not finish the work. Therefore, we need to pick up the baton and act. Clearly, he didn't finalise enough. Not least, he did not consider the increases to be detrimental to businesses, which is minuted in the council minutes of the 23rd of February. But he is already to change that, expecting us to believe that it was his intention all along to provide a shopper's car park in Sidmouth only, but oddly did not mention it before or during the budget debate until after the budget meeting and until council tax bills have started to land on people's doormats. He also expects us to believe that the details was being sense checked. Who was it checked with? Was this discussed and when with stakeholders, e.g. members of the council, not least of all those board members in Sidmouth, Sidmouth Town Council, Sidmouth Chamber of Commerce, and where are the results of these conversations? If not, why not? What other car parks in Exmouth, Budley Salterton, Oniston, Axminster and Seaton were discussed as possible candidates for shoppers' car parks, as presumably Sidmouth doesn't have conditions that are uniquely different to anywhere else in places where EDDC car parks are located. Far from the nonsense suggestion of previous Conservatives administration backing the issues of car parking charges, they recognise that the question of that. They recognise that the question of paid parking is very sensitive one in the high street businesses, as well as people who use our high streets. And if you put them up, it will have a detrimental impact on high streets, already adversely affected by online and out-of-town shopping offers. The current economic situation affects those most vulnerable the hardest. In all our town and villages, there are residents struggling to pay their council tax, let alone increased parking charges, many having to drive to access services due to the rural nature of East Devon. Let us be honest, this is just another example of our badly led councils being trapped by strategy being made on the hoof. It's not a good reason to push up charges to balance of books in service areas not related to car parking activities, not least bailing out LED over the past 2 years to the tune of £3.7 million and counting. We all recognise the value LED brings to East Devon, but not at the expense of other businesses who could have done with a share of support, and particularly when it holds £1.5 million in reserves. Car parking policy decisions should be made at full council level and not left to cabinet and officers by delegation, or you run the real risk of having more ill-conceived decisions like that's being made, specifically in the case of Roxburgh Car Park. It doesn't seem to have occurred to anyone that this will increase congestion in a part of Sidmouth with narrow streets, or that it will have the opposite effect of what I imagine was intended, in that people will actually stay less time and spend less money because the nature of what is proposed, causing even more damage to Sidmouth High Street businesses. And there is a reluctance to support this proposal from officers involved. Listen to the Cabinet meeting on the 2nd of February, 1 hour, 18 minutes into it. I propose a motion for decisions of this type only to be made at full council and not Cabinet, and that the whole parking charge regime comes back to full council with full equities and economic impact assessment before going out for a period of public consultation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Colin. Councillor Cagle, Fred.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak. I've got to be honest, we've had some very good speeches from previous councillors. I don't intend to make a long speech, but I'm just a bit concerned that here we are, where we've had a full council vote at the last council meeting about car parking charges, and all of a sudden we're called to an extraordinary general meeting to vote on a unique status within the car park portfolio. So what's so unique about a car park? Okay, we can call any car park a shopper's car park. You can park anywhere. And take Exmouth, for example, just because a car park is on the estuary or even on the seafront doesn't stop it from being a shopper's car park. A car park is a car park. And I don't see why we're here discussing one small car park in Sidmouth as opposed to any other car park in the district, just because somebody decides that we've got to change the rules for a car park in Sidmouth. And I feel it's totally wrong. It's not democratic, and it should go back to full council. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Councillor Desaram, Bruce.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. And what I wanted to say was also to thank the previous public speakers, Mr. Goodman and Richard Ely, and I felt they were very well informed and put forward very informative points. What I would like to quickly say very briefly is to suggest that this meeting tonight indicates that Councillor Arnott and the team were too quick on this occasion to pick up the baton in the interests not of the entire district as we've been touched upon, as you would hope, but simply to the benefit, as the report says, of the residents and businesses of Sidmouth, which is of course good news for those residents of Sidmouth, but bad news for the district as a whole and bad for the budget we just set, especially as members may recall the Conservative proposal was felt not to offer an alternative solution, yet what we have heard before us is proof that the council didn't understand what it was doing, in that the 2 car parks were affected, 21 car parks were affected, especially as the report indicates that the charging policy will be unique and difficult to predict the effect on projected income. So I suggest, as a previous speaker has mentioned, that the whole car parking charges regime comes back to full council with full equalities and economic impact assessments before going out to a period of public consultations. So for the reasons that I've just discussed, Chair, I will be myself unable to support the items 1 and 2 recommendations on tonight's agenda. But thank you ever so much for giving me the opportunity to express my opinions based on the facts tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Bruce. Councillor Ranger, Val.
Thank you. Certainly, if I just touch on the petition that was going around, the one that I was asked to sign certainly didn't mention that, and I don't know if if the figures were put forward to the public, that for 5 months of the year, you can park for £2 all day. As we've said, permits £10 a week. It would be helpful for us if we made it easier for people to pay that monthly, and that is something that we're working on. We still don't charge after 6 p.m. and there is no charge higher than £8 for all day parking. Members might remember that there's been car parking TAFs where we've been round and round and round in circles until eventually the meetings stop being called, where we actually, arguably you can say every car park is unique. I don't see how this matter can be brought back. We've agreed a balanced budget for the year going forward, so I don't really see that we can call this whole matter back in at this point. Some councillors might not remember that the Roxburgh car park has been different historically. I seem to recall when we first lived here that it was a permits only in the morning to encourage local shoppers. And I believe the reason that was changed was because it remained empty for most of the time. Another point that's been made in other meetings is that, the last time we raised charges, it took X number of years. I can't remember if it was 4 or 5 years for our income to come back up to where it was before. That's a situation we would totally want to avoid. That is the point, I believe, in recommendation 2. We're going to go ahead with our charges this year, starting in April. And if it appears by the summer that that's having a detrimental effect on our income, obviously the best thing is that we can move as quickly and flexibly as possible to change that, not wait the 4 or 5 years as the previous administration did for it to catch up, which would be a very poor way of working, in my opinion. So I'm thinking for flexibility, that I will be I'll be supporting recommendation 1 and certainly recommendation 2 for the reasons of that flexibility. We've had some very tortuous meetings. Sometimes when we go to full council, people repeat the same thing and go on and on and on. One question I have is should the administration change in the May 2023, will the new administration, if it was a new one, be saying, let's put our charges back to where they were before, because they are going to face even greater challenges in presenting a balanced budget. So that's something, just a point I'm going to make, that for all those people that are calling for the charges, shouldn't be already saying the charges aren't going to work. Are they going to reverse them should they have the opportunity? So I will be supporting both recommendation 1 and 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Val. Councillor Ledger, Dan.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'll keep it very brief. Could I please propose number 1 and 2 as listed in the report? And just remind members that, yes, we can disagree with officers, but there has been a lot of work that's gone into this. We had an earlier meeting today with regards to personnel and the way that we should be acting as councillors. And I just want members to be mindful with their language on how we speak about officers and the work that they've conducted. I'd just like to remind everyone that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Councillor Wright. Tom.
Are you asking for a seconder since it's been proposed?
I'll second.
Sorry, Henny, would you? There was a proposal that it be put. Was that
no,
right?
but there's a proposal. There's a proposal to move it as recommended, and normally we'd ask for a seconder.
I'll second it.
Sorry, my apologies. I didn't catch who seconded that.
No, nor did I.
Tony Woodward.
Oh, Tony. Okay. I think what I'd still like to do, though, is actually move on and give the rest of the speakers chance to speak. I certainly wouldn't want to go to a vote at this point. I think that'd be premature. You happy with that, Dan?
Yeah, more than happy. Just wanted to propose it, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, well, noted. Proposed and seconded duly, which saves me doing the job later on. Sorry, Councillor Wright. Tom.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't intend to speak this evening, but I feel I ought to. I know the Roxburgh car park well. We were often shoppers in Sidmouth. But the Roll car park, directly in the centre of Budley, opposite our 2 major supermarkets, opposite what used to be the bank, is also very much a shopper's car park. Why has that not been considered? Suddenly just throw in 1 car park, I suspect for political reasons, in Sidmouth, is, I think, totally inappropriate. And I also would like to come in a response to Richard Ely. When I was a deputy portfolio holder, and I think Ian Chubb was a portfolio holder, when we were looking, because we did look at car parks, we did consider them, we did weigh the possibilities and the impact on local businesses. And I think Richard Ely, I don't know if he's listening, will remember that he attended a number of meetings at the Knoll, held to consider our car parking strategy. We included all the chambers of commerce within the district. And also, I remember the manager of the Budley Tourist Information Centre was party to those discussions. So we had those discussions. I would also like to pick up the second part of this proposal about taking the decision on car parks away from council. Councillor Ranger, who I've got a great deal of respect for, did mention that we have the permits, which are very good, but also that these car parking charges only refer to car parks up until 6 o'clock in the evening. Well, there's one Budley car park in the centre of Budley, which is a 24-hour car park paying. And if we delegate this power to Cabinet, what's to say that suddenly, as a matter of course, they decide that car parking will be payable all day in all our car parks. So I do not support the second part of this, the reason for this meeting, in that this process should be delegated to Cabinet. When you look at the figures, people bandy about this £10 a month for a car parking permit. The £120 for a car parking permit is more than 3/4 of the amount that people pay East Devon for East Devon's council tax. So it's not an insignificant amount, and we are imposing on people who have no option but to use their cars actually almost a double increase in council tax. That's all I want to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tom. Councillor Rowland. Jack.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to repeat some things that have been said because I think there's been a
a great emphasis on continually mentioning doubling car park charges. But when you bear in mind that it's 12 years since car park charges were reviewed, and during that time, VAT has increased from 17.5% to 20%, and the inflation over that period, then the net income to this council has reduced considerably. And we're not talking about all car parks being increased, we're talking about a percentage of them. And mention has been made about shoppers' car parks. Well, there are a number of car parks, so I'll mention Exmouth, where the charge is going to be £1.50. So that actually covers some of the questions that have been raised about shoppers' car parks in town centres. And within my own ward in Seaton, the Orchard car park will also be £1.50. So there are a gradient of charges being applied across the districts, not a one size fits all, because we are very conscious of trying to help businesses. But the fact remains that because of this lack of increases over 12 years, it does look like in some cases a dramatic increase. But I would ask people to bear in mind that 12-year gap where no increases have been imposed. And this administration has had to grasp a number of nettles because we're also finding, for example, that a lot of assets owned by this district council have not been properly maintained over a number of years. And the capital budget that's being needed to tackle some urgent health and safety issues is quite dramatic and more than has ever been envisaged before. So that's another factor to bear in mind about why we're also having to produce a balanced budget, which is also helping to protect us going into the future, not just for this next budget year, but to also help the known pressures that are coming through in the medium-term financial plan. So I'm actually proud to be part of this administration that's actually grasping these nettles, which have not really been tackled before because they haven't always been readily apparent. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jack. Councillor Lawrence. Richard.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to throw in a couple of things here. I mean, Councillor Rowan just mentioned about balancing the budget. I understood that car parking wasn't supposed to balance the budget. Car parking was supposed to be income for car parking, not to pay for other things that we can't otherwise afford. The other thing is I refer to the member of the public who spoke earlier, Mike Goodman, where he said he felt that the councillors were confused. We weren't confused, we were deliberately misled. Most of this changing the prices in Sidmouth has come after even the council tax bills landing on people's mats. You know, who makes these decisions? Are we a council and do we make decisions ourselves, or does somebody make the decisions and then just put our name at the end of it? I don't understand where we're coming from with this. It just doesn't make sense to me at all. And going along about this permit, this £10 a month permit, well, I know a number of people in Sidmouth who bought permits and they can't even get in the car park in the summer. So, you know, it's a bit pointless having it, really. Anyway, I've had my say. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor Parr. Helen.
Thank you. Yes, I hear Councillor Ledger telling us to take notice of what the officers said. Well, I actually listened again to the the YouTube recording of the Cabinet in 2nd of February. And at that point, Marianne Rickson asked for Roxburgh to be included in this £1.50 list and not be a prime car park. And Andrew Ennis gave advice to the committee at that time. And what he said was, I think if you have one cheap car park and the other's more expensive, you'll have a further congestion and queuing problem. And it didn't make sense. So I've suggested if we're going to go to £2 in those Sidmouth Centre car parks, it should be all or nothing. Nothing else makes sense. And I entirely agree with him. None of the car parks should be £2. What are we doing? It's a huge hike. It's quite disgraceful. In January, officers advised the administration And they were still thinking about £1.20 rise, and then £1.50 in the prime car parks, that then this budget would balance, but we couldn't have the wish list. That would be unaffordable. But they also said at that time that senior management team would look into ways with Cabinet, ways to make savings and increase income over the next months, so that these items we wanted could be achieved later. And that's what we should have done. We shouldn't have put forward this enormous hike in car parking charges, which, as people have pointed out, is not what car parking charges are supposed to be for. They are not to just fund other services. And people knew when they hiked up the prime car parks to £2 an hour, they're going to bring in a huge amount of revenue over what was needed. And this was deliberate to then pay for services stuff that they wanted. And it's not that the Conservatives in the past, oh, they didn't raise the charges for all this time. As has been said, Conservatives were concerned about the effect on high street businesses, and they found other ways of finding income which didn't penalise people who in a rural area need their cars. I think this is absolutely wrong. I'm not going to vote for any increases or decreases anywhere. And I do think this matter should stay with council, because obviously all councillors have a huge interest in what happens to car parking. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Councillor Young, Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point on Budley car parks. Do remember there is a free car park that is leased to the town council there. So they have got a benefit of a free car park. So no, it's cheaper than £1.50. This fixation on the hourly rate, yes, from £1 to £2, that's 100%. But look at the maximum price. The maximum price has gone up from £6 to £8. And I'm told that we're going to be the most expensive on the in the southwest. Well, Exeter, we all know, is far more expensive. All-day parking in premium is £18 per day. Zone 1 is 13, Zone 2 is 11. Some of the car parks in Salcombe, £8, £10. Plymouth, £12. Bude, £8.70. Timbridge, £10. Dorset, well, £9, £8. And if you can afford to go to Sandbanks, well, that's extortionate. But then you'd expect that. But all of Bournemouth is highly, highly more expensive than us. So we are in the middle, I would say now, with car parks, and not at the cheap end. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Councillor Ingham, Ben.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to just say, I think it's fair to say that I say this on behalf of the whole of my group. Based on what someone said earlier, we have complete respect for all the staff of East Devon District Council, and we always have. And I think you'll find that's a mutual relationship. It's paramount that when people work with you and for you and guide you, that you show them respect at all times. Councillor Parr was quite right to say that we have to listen to officers when they guide us in committee. And she was right to highlight that occasion in February, because if we don't listen to our officers when they know clearly what the evidence is, then we tend to make mistakes. And at the moment, Chair, in my opinion, the Cabinet are acting, the Walt Disney film Fantasia. In part of that, there's the Magician's Apprentice, where he runs around faster and faster trying to correct things, but loses control. And it seems to me that we're in this position at the moment as a result of leadership not listening to our officers and taking quick and insecure decisions. And who pays for this? The council taxpayer pays for this, Chair. And I noted what Councillor Bonetta said, in search of democracy, and he's quite right. This sort of thing has to go back to full council. I also have to say that with democratic rights, you expect, if you live in East Devon, that there's a level playing field when it comes to car parks on what you can afford. Yet it seems to me that where car parks are concerned, a budget's being set based on what the Cabinet want, not what East Devon actually need. And they want to fulfill this wish list. And I don't know whether any referral has yet been made to the Ombudsman. But if there is one, it'll be fascinating to hear what they say with regards to the accountability of raising car park charges, as has been the case over the last few months, and the logic and reason for doing so. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ben. Councillor Hayward, Paul.
Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm out in the middle of nowhere on the phone, so if I cut out, my apologies. Just a few comes to come back. Councillor Young covered a point that, the whole of the TAF was mired in parochialism. Each ward member is fearful of their own future, and so they fight for their own communities. That's why we're ward members. But we do have to see the bigger picture. If councils were prohibited from raising car parking charges, they would never go up. They'd still be tuppence, but they all go up. Every council raises parking charges, but this has been done on the basis of targeting tourist car parks, just as there are differential prices throughout Exeter and most major towns that you go to. I suppose the point I'm trying to say is we keep getting told this, these political things. This is a political thing. We're all politicians, but this is being spun as a political a weapon. It's not. It's a necessity, because we need to establish a protocol for our parking charges. Where we have let ourselves down collectively as a council, sorry, I'm just catching my breath, is that this situation has been kicked into long grass, as Councillor Rowland says, for decades. Had it been managed, had it been assessed, had the impacts been done, it would have been a progressive change. I take exception to Councillor Wright saying that, this is a doubling of council tax charges. Every single person who goes out and parks their car effectively is subsidising council tax, because if this council was so minded, we would make all parking free, just have a complete free-for-all, and then we would have to reassess our budgets. We can't raise council tax any other way, but if by their logic, make all the car parks free, make them like Budley. So this has to be done on a pragmatic basis. And I believe we've assessed what we've looked at, but we also now listened to the impact of the Roxburgh issue, hence why it's before you now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Next, I've got Councillor Ragg. Eileen, please.
Chair, as my name was mentioned by the last speaker, I would like the right to reply at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Yeah, there isn't actually technically a right of reply on that basis, Tom, but in the interest of that, I will allow it later on.
Thank you.
May I speak, Chair?
Apologies, Eileen, of course you can.
No apologies needed. I think we need to get a sense of perspective in all of this. The Conservatives on this council wanted us to return to physical meetings. Now, a physical meeting for us here in Exmouth, and there are, to my reckoning, 14 or 15 councillors, district councillors in Exmouth, and bearing in mind COVID, if we took our individual vehicles across, and not everybody has a vehicle, and they have to, some have taxis, some have to go by public transport, which takes over 2 hours. For me in particular, a travel claim to go to one meeting at East Devon would be £16.67. So please, let's get a sense of perspective. And I've seen people drive into Exmouth, park in the car park in London Inn, and go to Costa Coffee. Now, what does a cup of Costa Coffee cost? I don't know. I can't afford it. I don't go there. If I have a coffee, I have one at home. The other thing that's been mentioned is delegation to cabinet. Well, for those of you who may not quite recall, we set up a governance review working party at East Devon. Then COVID struck. Now, that governance review was to consider bringing back the committee system, because those of us, some of those of us, and there are a number, recall the committee system and how successful it was. And we do know that that is supported by officers as well, some officers. They preferred that way of working. It was much more democratic and not so autocratic. So that is where the committees would make recommendations to full council, and full council would take the decisions. So I think we must get back to retaining a sense of proportion here and not resort to the hysteria, because that's what it seems to me, of a £2 charge, and that's not in all car parks by any means. And the permit system, the residential permit system, is an excellent value to local residents. So please get a sense of proportion here, you know, make it less political, less party political, and let's work together and get the best deal for the residents of East Devon. And thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much, Eileen. Councillor Howell, Mike.
Thank you. I'm pulling my hair out. I can't believe Eileen's just said to make it less political, when most of the EDA have made it political along with herself. I wanted to thank Councillor Bonetta, because I thought his speech was spot on. I'm happy to support the first part of this motion. I'm certainly not happy, though, to support the second. And that's the issue, is I think it still needs to stay with full council. I have no problem with reducing it in the Roxburgh. That's fine. And then we can have a good discussion about other car parks around the district and bring them back to full council at a later date, as everyone else gets on, quite rightly, on the idea of having, you know, shoppers' car parks that we need. Councillor Young, I want to pick up. I'll go through a few people here now. Great name of list of places and car parking charges. Very few of them relate to the size or scale of Exmouth or many other of our towns, come to think of it. If you want to go to Bournemouth, you'll see a high street that's relatively thriving still. I was just there just last week. They've got a really big national hall that does great shows and everything else. And, you know, we haven't got these things here. We've got little theatres, great little theatres, doing great little shows, but not national shows or anything else going around. So if you want to compare, you know, eggs with eggs, you need to find another egg and not compare something totally different. suppose that's my desperation. We're going to take this as 2, and I think the Roxburgh needs to reduce in price because I think it's wrong. But I can't vote for that now because I've got to vote against the item 2. So that's where I am. That's what I'll be voting. But if you want to split them, I'm more than happy then to support item 1, and I can, quite happily vote against item 2 and see where we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. It's worth pointing out at this point that it's quite apparent to me as chair that there are different significant divergences of opinion between item 1 and item 2. So with the agreement of the proposers, when we do go to a vote, I would propose to take them separately. So obviously that then one doesn't compromise the other, which hopefully is helpful.
Happy to, Chair.
Pardon?
More than happy to, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dan. That's appreciated. Councillor Faithful, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. When we were discussing the car parks before, there was the option, the talk of between 120 and 150. And I don't know, maybe I should have asked at the time whether Simon May could have given us the figures for this, like 130, 140, and how each of those figures would have impacted the general fund or whatever. When I'm working on putting up prices, some of us sit down and actually take trouble to try all the options, not just sort of jumping around from one extreme to the other. But we never did look at how much an increase of 130 or 140 would have, just the 2 options before. So, could those be looked into? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. And Councillor Hall, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. We had the one in-person meeting at Exmouth and setting the budget. And then lo and behold, we are back to here trying to adjust the decisions, what being made, like them or not. All residents, businesses and visitors need East Devon District car parks to be an attractive magnet to ensure East Devon District can actually thrive. I was always told, and I believe, that being a councillor is being fair and reasonable. Is the agenda item going to have a fair and reasonable outcome for all the residents of East Devon? We must have individual and collective integrity. And in my view, these tickets are going to mean a lot to the people and the businesses of East Devon. And are they, after tonight, going to be saying that was a fair outcome? I'm not too sure. In my mind, I believe both these areas need to go back to full council, because again, looking from the lens of the people we represent, yes, people in Sidmouth are going to be very happy. But if this is a one area that actually gets a benefit from a change of tact, and no other area on towns of our very much as important communities are left behind, this is not going to look good on any councillor or any community or us as an authority. So as I say, it's not hard. We haven't got to reinvent the wheel here. Let's have some integrity here and take them both back to council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hall. What I propose to do, in that we've run just over an hour now, and I think we've given this subject a pretty good airing, with everybody really, I think, having chance hopefully to have spoken. I'm going to take Councillor Wright in a second, but obviously I'm working on Tom doing a very short response to clarify everything you said before. Yep, that's lovely. I'll then take Councillor Moulding and Councillor Arnott, and then invite Councillor Ledger to sum up if he wishes, or if he wishes to pass that, then that's great, and then we'll go straight to the vote. Okay, members, so Councillor Wright, Tom, please.
Thank you. Can I congratulate you on the judgment of Solomon, Chair, in deciding to split the 2 issues, because they are 2 different issues. I'm coming back because, as the Budley Free Car Park, it's not a free car park to East Devon. Budley Salterton Town Council actually pays East Devon District Council a rent for that car park to keep it free for residents. And the reason it is still free is because there is a tripartite deed whereupon Clinton Devon Estates gave that bit of land and the green for the free use of the people of Budley Salterton. And it'll be very expensive for East Devon District Council to challenge that deed in the courts, and that's why that remains free. But it's not free to East Devon District Council. It is free because Budley Salterton Town Council pays a rent for it and maintains it. And I can say that I am no longer a member of Budley Salterton Town Council, so I'm not breaching any code of conduct. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that clarification, Tom. Yes, I recall that particular issue. Councillor Moulding, Andrew.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm reading paragraph 4 on this very brief report, where it says that it is considered this will be of benefit to the residents and businesses of Sidmouth and provide a balance between the needs to service the leisure industry and the local needs of those living and operating businesses in Sidmouth. Do we not think that businesses in our other towns and residents in our other towns would be rather concerned that they hadn't, first of all, been consulted through their parish councils, nor through their chambers of trade or their ward members, because this to me is not democracy. And therefore, why should we vote for this for Sidmouth and not for our other towns? And this makes it all the more important that this decision should be referred to full council, not to the cabinet, where just a few selected councillors have the opportunity to vote. We should all be enabled on behalf of our own local residents to vote on this decision. So I cannot vote on either the first part or the second part of this proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Councillor Arnott, Paul.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm sure many on all sides of the chamber would like me to keep this short, including my own, but I do just need to cover off, as they say, a few points. So let us look at the interesting subject of ownership. Ownership. Who has the copyrights on this issue of car park charges? I would happily go to any court in the land and support the Conservative Party's right to assert copyright over this entire issue. Your party has destroyed the finances of local government. Locally, you have suppressed council tax rises regularly over the last decade. At East Devon District Council, the failure of the Conservative Party to deal with this for more than a decade since, as I wrote in the newspaper that Councillor, the gentleman from Surrey, Councillor Goodman, so enjoys, we haven't looked at this since Downton Abbey first started in 2010. However, what council decided to do, and I supported this, I can't quite remember, I may even have seconded this a few years ago, was to give the opportunity to council to get this sorted out through a task and finish forum. And that fell within the purview of scrutiny, which, because under our constitution, that is chaired by the official opposition, was chaired by the Conservatives. Conservatives, you have not called that council to meet since November 2020. You have left the job unfinished, and you cannot say anything other than that. I'm immensely grateful to Councillor Parr for enabling me to use her information to help Councillor Goodman with the assertion that this has just come up recently in reaction to one of his petitions. It hasn't. Councillor Rickson, as far as the Roxburgh is concerned, had said this was a good idea. It was a good idea, but it was not something that could be done within the time available. Why was there a shortage of time available, you may ask, Council? because the car park TAF had not met since December 2020. As a Democrat, I was happy to think that it was carrying on doing its work. It turned out it wasn't. We had budget setting coming up at the end of last year, and we had to move in. Now, if I may address the point for our new Tribune for Democracy, Councillor Bonetta, I have to say he is like somebody who is enjoying a Netflix series of 8 parts and has just tuned in, probably at the end of part 7, because he has not seen any of the previous chapters of this. I would absolutely love it if this could be returned to a TAF chaired by the Conservatives, and possibly after his speech tonight, the Conservatives may give him preference on the committee, appointing vice chair of that. But I've got absolutely no confidence it will do its work. When it comes to the second recommendation, and I don't want to put Henry on the spot, I'm sure he'll be able to confirm it, that second recommendation hasn't been authored by me, it hasn't been authored by any of Cabinet, it is from the wise thinking of Henry, having watched what has gone on in this council for the last few years. How do we move forward with this? How do we make sure we finish the unfinished work of the Task and Finish Forum with all sorts of other issues just left dangling, like camper vans, for example? Cabinet meets monthly, and it is therefore a useful body at which to have the preliminary discussions. But I have to say to those who are presenting themselves as democratic tribunes tonight, for heaven's sake, surely you realise you can call any cabinet minute you like. Council is not in some way disenfranchised by this process. Rather, this council is enabled to get on with the job that has been failed to be achieved so signally since December 2020. I'd love to give it back. I'd absolutely love to give it back. And I would further, just to be very clear, and this is a little bit off-piste where Councillor Ragg went, the committee system. I'd love the committee system. I would have loved it when we first discussed this in 2019 under the governance review, if there wasn't such blatant opposition to it at the time from the Conservatives and indeed from the then administration. If it hadn't been for that, we may be sitting under a committee system now. And I have to say, if I'm fortunate enough to be re-elected as a councillor in 2023 in whatever role, and there's a governance review about that, that will have my hearty support. And finally, Chair, I cannot quite understand the people saying we must bring this back to full council about Roxburgh. Chair, we are sitting in full council now. You've got a chance to make a decision about the Roxburgh. How many times do you want to dance around the head of this pin? Which is probably a mixed metaphor. So I believe, Chair, we have followed officers' advice. I think it is disrespectful of the officers' advice as far as recommendation 2 is concerned to vote against it. In my view, I think recommendation 1 is something that had always been considered. I don't think that the Twain quoting Councillor Goodman can claim great credit for this, as I can't remember what his quote was, victory for the people. I mean, this has been a victory perhaps for his own reputation in terms of making himself more prominent, but I think that's an irrelevance. So, Chair, I hope I've covered everything that was said there. I'll be voting for both recommendations separately. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid, Councillor Brown, I'm not going to take you again. You did
Well, can I just come back?
No, I'm sorry, Councillor Brown. No,
come back about parking tax.
No, I'm sorry, Councillor Brown.
Because comments were made by
sorry, Councillor Brown.
Were not correct.
Councillor Brown. Sorry, no, I did say I wasn't going to take any more, and all I would like now, please, is Councillor Ledger. Could you, if you wish to sum up, if you don't want to, happy to take the vote straight away, then I'll move straight on to that.
Please move straight on, Chair.
Okay, well, I think we've had a good run round this afternoon. It's over an hour. Everybody's had the chance to speak at least once, and hopefully they feel they've made their points and had the opportunity. So what I'm going to do, as I said earlier, is I'm going to take each of the recommendations separately. So first, this is voting on recommendation 1, that Roxburgh Car Park, Sidmouth, is subject to the revised arrangements as detailed in paragraph 3 of the report. Would you please vote for using your green ticks, against with your red crosses, or raised hand for an abstention? Ooh,
Chair, the voting is underway. Just allow it to settle, and it's 28. Just allow it to finish. 30 green ticks in favour, 15 red crosses, and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much. So that element is adopted as a recommendation. Secondly, moving on to the second recommendation is that the car park strategy is removed from the policy framework and the constitution amended accordingly. Again, could members vote in favour using the green tick, against with the red cross, or again the yellow hand representing an abstention?
Voting is underway again. And just allow the numbers to settle. 23 green ticks in favour, 21 red crosses, and 4 abstentions.
Thank you very much. So again, that is also adopted. So the recommendations from this meeting to the officer are recommendations 1 and 2 on page 3 of the meeting papers as put. So thank you very much, members. Appreciate your attention this evening, and also those who've had the first shift earlier on today. This brings our council meeting to an end, and I'd like to thank everyone, including members of the public, for their attendance. Members, could I remind you, please, that until the Democratic Services team confirms that live streaming or recording has stopped, you can still be seen and heard, and any comments made may be recorded. Thank you.